everyone. Welcome to Creative Conversations with David and Donna. I'm David.
And I'm Donna.
We're here for the 32nd time.
Woo-hoo! 32.
32.
Yep.
That's such a foundation we've built. It's beautiful. So if this is your first time, and
I was going to say that's the age I got married.
That 32?
32?
Wow. Maybe this is the podcast that's going to blow up.
Yes, it is.
So if you're listening for the first time, go back and watch all 31 others.
Yep.
Pretty please.
I'm yawning. I just got in from my school day, so I don't mean to be tired, but
we be yawning.
We be yawning.
So this is Creative Conversations with David and Donna, as I said.
Yep.
And before we get started, I just want to give a quick little promo to our friends over at the Sciencefictionary.com. They do podcasts just like we do, weekly podcasts. They have one on all about Star Wars, and they have a more general nerdy podcast. I've been on the Star Wars one a couple times, but I'm now a pretty much permanent guest over on the one that's just more general nerdy stuff. That one's called the Science Fictionarian, and the links to all of their podcasts are in the description of this video. They are great friends, and they've helped us out, and we want to help them out. So go check out the Sciencefictionary.com for all of your nerdy needs. All of your nerdy needs.
So you have been recording with them this week?
I recorded them with them this week, yeah. On Monday.
Yeah, today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. It was Monday, and recorded with them some last Thursday. And lots of really nerdy news that I could bring up here, but I feel like, no offense.
Maybe just a little.
Right.
A sprinkle. Give us a sprinkle of what you talked about.
We're talking about the new Batman photos, the set photos. Have you seen those?
Mm.
Well, there's a new Batman movie coming out, and there are more set photos of the bat suit and the thoughts we felt about that. We talked a bit about the Bloodshot movie that's coming out. I heard of Bloodshot.
Mm-mm.
It is just this weird, obscure comic book movie. And we talked about some Star Trek. I watched the Wrath of Khan, the original Wrath of Khan, because we're doing this thing where every week, me and one of the guests on the show, Marisha, we both watch a new Star Trek movie and then talk about it and give our thoughts. And I'm gonna talk about Wrath of Khan, but I thought about that a little bit later in this show. And you've seen Wrath of Khan. You're a much bigger Star Trek fan than I am.
But it's been a while. You have to remind me of some of it. Yeah.
But we can talk about it a little bit. And speaking of comic book films, I'm just going. I just have so much stuff.
Oh, I think you should just go.
I had this idea. I wanted to make a video where I made a tier list of every comic book movie ever made. And I went on tiermaker.com and searched for one, and I found many tier lists that did this, but I could not find one that really fit what I wanted, which was every comic book movie ever made. And not just like superhero movies, like comic book. Any movie that is based on a comic book, I wanted to put in the tier list. And so I found this link. I found this this website that had a list of every comic book movie ever made. I forget the name of the website, but the link will be in the description. I'll leave a link there to their list. And starting with Superman in 1978, there were movies made before that, but I've never seen them. Right. So if I put them on this tier list, it would just end up in the haven't seen section. So starting with Superman, 1978, I made a tier list template of every comic book movie ever made, and I'm going to be doing a video on that very soon where I rank them and review them all, and I posted it on our Twitter, which is stay_creativeDD, tagged tiermaker, #tiermaker, and that got some responses and some likes, and a lot of people posting what their own lists were. They would do the list. They would do the tier rating that I made, which was really cool and exciting. So I'm going to be trying to do a lot more stuff over on Twitter, where I just I'm going to retweet. I'm the one who handles the Twitter usually, so I'll post whenever a new podcast is up. But also I will comment on anything that's going on in the world that I think we could comment on. Mm-hmm. So definitely go check out the Twitter. That link's in the description as well. Stay_DD. Stay_creative DD.
There, you got it out.
Is there anything else?
Well, I feel like you should talk more about like your process for making your list, and were there any that you've never heard of, and just
yeah. So I wanted to do every comic book movie ever made, and that's really not been done before. Like I said, like there are tier lists, but it's like not every comic book movie ever made. And there are a lot of movies that are based on comic books that are not superhero related that people don't realize. For example, I was just telling Donna, The Mask, starring Jim Carrey, that was originally a comic book, and it was actually a horror comic book.
Well, where was it a comic book? How many different, like, I know there's the DC Universe and Marvel and...
It was an indie comic book.
Okay, it's indie.
It wasn't, like, in Marvel or DC.
So you obviously have seen the Mask movie.
Yes.
So tell me how they got that goofy comedy from a horror comic book.
Well, it's a horror comic book, and it's like the guy gets the mask, and it's just like a crazy, like, psycho, like, killer, basically.
So Jekyll and Hyde.
It's like Jekyll and Hyde,
Yeah.
you could say that, yeah.
Because I mean that is what the movie is about, but in a much more humorous, lighthearted way.
I haven't read the comic book. This is just my understanding of what it was. It was a lot darker than the movie, and the movie's still pretty dark, but this is like a lot darker. And from my understanding, they just sort of like were like, this would translate a whole lot better as a comedy. This should just be a comedy.
Well, especially you got Jim Carrey doing it.
Yeah. I've been in love with Jim Carrey lately because there was this great interview he did with, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, and he like came out on stage and everyone was clapping and he just kind of stared for a while at the audience, everybody going crazy and cheering, and Jimmy was like, Jim, and Jim was like, huh? And then he was like, How are you? And he's like, oh, I'm good. And he just went back to staring, and it's like, what? It's just something about it. Something about that.
Well, he played Andy Kaufman. That sounds very Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Oh, I love Andy Kaufman and his wrestling feuds, because, you know, I love wrestling, so I know about Andy Kaufman, yeah. But, anyway, yeah, The Mask was a comic book movie, and you know what else was it? Men in Black. Did you know that?
I'm not surprised, but no, I didn't.
Men in Black's a comic book movie. So the point is, there's just a lot. So I was going through this list.
Well, I would like to know more, actually, but you can come back to that if you had something else to say.
About what?
More what things are from comics that most people don't know.
Most things that are from comics that most people don't know. I'm trying to think of some more specific ones. Flash Gordon.
That sounds like a comic to me.
It does sound like a comic, but it's a very popular sci-fi movie. Dick Tracy, comic book. You know the show Riverdale? Mm-hmm. It's a comic book. Mm-hmm. Did you know that one? That one's a bit more popular.
I think that was actually a comic strip that was in newspapers when I was growing up. Yeah,
it wasn't newspaper, but the Archie comics are the big. Yeah, that's been running for like extremely long time.
It really has.
But a lot of people that I meet don't know that, and they're like, I love Riverdale.
The whole age difference between us, because I read Archie comics in newspapers when I was growing up.
I've never read Archie comics, but I understand that they're huge deals. So, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but just a lot of stuff comes from comic books. And there's comic books about everything. Everything gets made into a comic book. If you like something, that's why I think comic books are amazing. And that reminds me of something I need to talk about. That we'll get into a little later, but AT&T owns DC now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where like they just have so much money they own things, and they own DC, and there is this big rumor that they are, if their next big event called the 5th Generation fails, they are going to close down DC Comics as a publishing line because it just doesn't make them enough money. So we can get to that. That's a big deal. And Dan DiDio just got fired from his job as head I think producer, as what his title was or something like that, over at DC Comics. But anyway, comics are very important to the cultural zeitgeist because everything is a comic book. If you watch all Power Rangers movies, right, and you're like, man, I just need more Power Rangers, there are comics. Same for like Transformers. I think Transformers were actually, no, that was a cartoon. Transformers was a cartoon, then became a comic, then it's the movies. But if you want more of something, it's probably in the comic books for you to go and find. So I love comic books, as we all know, and I think they're very important. So I just have so much to say this week, I guess. Sorry, but
that's fine.
DC could be shutting down, and I know you're not a comic book person,
but that's huge. But I mean, Marvel and DC are the two main.
Those are our. I make the comparison that Marvel and DC are our Greek gods, in the same way that they had Zeus and things like that. We have Superman and Batman. You know, it's like these are our gods that we write these mythology. It's a mythology. And right, that is huge. It's a very, very big deal. And I talked a bit more about it on the Sciencefictionarian. And what I sort of came, I was sort of like, there's no way. I mean, like, yeah, you can sorry, excuse me. AT&T can come in there and say whatever, but they're not going to close down DC Comics. It's DC Comics. But when you start to think about it, and this is the truth. I don't know how much you know about this, but I'm sure you're not going to be surprised. The comic book industry has been slowly dying for decades.
Well, everything in print.
Everything, exactly. And comic books are one of the last things to remain from that, really. I mean, magazines used to be a much bigger deal than what they are. And Newspaper, right. And But comic books have remained, but it's been going downhill. What used to be a multi-million-dollar thing is now they get excited. It used to be the standard to get 200,000 sales an issue. Mm-hmm. Now they get excited when it's something like that. It's like, oh my God, we got that much. Like, you're begging for that readership, and Marvel has been able to grow and rise, of course, because of their movies and the popularity. But DC has just not been able to get the same way. Even though you have characters like Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, these huge deals, their comic book company and their issues just don't sell as much. And I have a lot to say about that because it kind of pisses me off. And Dan DiDio just recently got fired. And, I feel kind of bad because I did like the guy. But I don't think he did a very good job as head of DC Comic Books. He signed on about 2010, so about 10 years. And in the past 10 years, DC has been a complete and utter mess. And it's not entirely his fault. It was kind of coming in that way. But, have you ever heard of the concept of crises and rebooting the universe and all that stuff happening like that?
You mean in the comic books?
In the comic books, yeah.
I think I've heard you talk about it, yeah.
Right, so Marvel has never rebooted their universe. Not once. Okay. It has been the same continuity for 70 plus years. If you read a comic book from the 1950s that has Marvel's logo on it, then that comic book happened in the continuity. It's all one big continuity. DC has rebooted countless and countless and countless times. A couple times made sense to reboot it. They were getting out of the golden age where Superman was so powerful he could breathe a little bit and push a planet out of its orbit. It made sense to reestablish things. But they keep rebooting, and it is absolutely ridiculous. And the reason they do it is because whenever they reboot and there's a new universe, sales go up. They get to see those beautiful little numbers. But it doesn't matter, and I don't understand why people don't get this yet, especially because your company's failing and you've rebooted 5 times in the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. Those numbers will go up, but they're going to drop real quickly because they know that you're going to reboot again, and nothing that they're reading right now is going to matter. Some of it carries over, some of it doesn't. Sometimes they say, well, I don't know what carried over, blah, blah, blah. They have all these events every 2 years now. There's a big new event. We're rebooting the universe. It started with in 2011, the New 52. They had Flashpoint, and they said, we can reboot it. Why? Why are you rebooting it? There's no reason. There was no reason to reboot. You had done Final Crisis about 5 years earlier. No reason to reboot at all. But they were like, we can get those sales numbers if we reboot, and we have a new brand, the New 52, and it worked. They have new number one issues. That's the idea, right? So you have these issues, and when there's a new number one on the shelf, and it's a big one, and you're at the comic book store and you're looking on the shelf, you go, wow, I can pick it up right there. It's the start of a brand new story, so I won't be lost. Yes, you will, because it's going to be confusing as hell if they just restarted everything. But it did boost sales. It was a huge success. But then people got mad because they realized, wait a minute, I really liked the other universe I was reading 5 seconds ago, but then you just threw it in the garbage for no reason. I don't like this. So then they go, oh, now we're doing Heroes in Crisis. And then, okay, so let's just list off the different reboots. There's been New 52. This is all in the past 10 years. New 52, Heroes in Crisis, Future's End, Doomsday Clock. There has been Rebirth. And I think that's it, actually. And then there was another one, 5G's coming up. Another crisis. So within 10 years... Well, 5G is not really a crisis, but it's more like we're rebooting the universe, new status quos. in the past 10 years, 5 reboots. Every 2 years, everything you read for the past 2 years, thrown in the garbage. Restarted. And it's a mess. And that's why DC is failing. And that's why there's actual talks about the end of DC Comics. Which just blows my mind. And it breaks my heart if they died. But to be fair, I ain't reading DC Comics right now. I go to the comic book store. I picked up some new Marvel issues. I didn't pick up any DC issues.
So who was the founder of DC?
I'm not sure. I actually don't remember. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
So Stan Lee was Marvel.
Yeah, Stan there was somebody. He wasn't the founder of like Timely. I think Marvel was Timely Comics, but Stan Lee was the maybe not the official founder, but he was the architect. You know, it's Stan Lee is Marvel.
Associated.
Stan Lee is
even
Marvel.
I know that.
Right. Yeah.
So there was never anyone like that for DC?
I believe there was. I mean, there were creators, but there was no Stan Lee, though. There was no one person who kind of like guided things in a straight direction for, like the same way Stan Lee did.
So he's the reason that Marvel has never rebooted, you think?
He at least at first, he probably established that. Like whenever he was still actually like in charge of things, you know, for the past 30 years or whatever, he hasn't actually been in charge of anything. He just was the figurehead.
I'm just trying to kind of understand in my brain.
Right.
It was because of this person they're letting go, or just like their advertising team or whatever, that they kept doing all these reboots at DC?
They kept doing it. Was probably because of him, but also they've been doing that since DC started.
So in the last 10 years since he's been there, they've done it a bunch, but they did it a bunch before that as well.
They did it a bunch, but not as frequently.
Okay.
And the reason they kept doing it a bunch is because it does boost sales for like a month. It's a very arbitrary thing, and it's really annoying because how do you not see through it? Where it's like they'll reboot it because they know when they reboot it, the first month of that reboot, sales are going to go up because people are like, what's going on this time? But after a while, that stops working. People stop falling for your tricks. Fool me once.
Get sick of it.
Right. Yeah. Fool me once. Right. And people were tired of being fooled and slapped around. And they treated the audience like they were idiots. Like, just like throwing things away. And DC's not growing because whenever you go pick up a comic book, there's no freaking telling if it mattered or not. If you're reading something that's pointless. Because it might have gotten wiped out. And if you're reading something right now, it might get wiped out in a year. Marvel's grown huge. I have many friends who have come to me and said, David, I want to read Captain America. I want to read Iron Man. Do you have any Hulk comics? Do you have any Spider-Man comics I can borrow? And I am joyfully like, yes, please read it all, because I want the comic book industry to thrive. I want the mom and pop shops of comic books to thrive. I don't buy my stuff online. I go to a comic book store down Sherwood. Like I go right over there and get comic books. And I love the industry and I want it to thrive. So when people come and ask me the comic books, I'm so excited. But notice, it was all Marvel characters they're asking for.
Right.
Because also, as Marvel's done great building their movies and their franchises, DC's screwed that up too. We talked a bit about Birds of Prey last week, how it just completely bombed. And it's like, what are you doing, man? It's completely screwed up. There is no universe for people to watch and be like, wow, that looks so amazing. I want to read about that. I want to read about the Flash. People are always going to buy Batman comic books, but before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man was a C-list character. Captain America was a C-list character. I mean, Captain America hadn't been relevant since World War II, literally.
Right.
But they did that, and now they build these characters where Iron Man's the biggest superhero in the world. So now, every freaking month, Iron Man's sounding like Batman. And they built it, they grew, and Marvel's grown. I think the industry, Marvel has control over 40% of the industry. Like, that's how much money they make. Like 40% of the money made in the comic book industry goes to Marvel. 20% of it's DC, the rest is indie.
Yeah. That's pretty
They
amazing.
make over half what DC does. Yet, DC has Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman.
Yeah, they need somebody that can just come in with the golden touch and say, hey, you need to use what you have.
You're right, exactly. Which is like what they did, and they've done that before. This guy called Grant Morrison came on. This is such a funny story to me. And I know that this is not really your wheelhouse, but
I don't mind talking about it.
This is a funny story. It's Grant Morrison came on in like the early 2000s, and And Grant Morrison is a very infamous comic book writer. He's a very good comic book writer, but he's very weird. And he's very out there.
Imagine that.
All right, have you heard of Alan Moore?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I knew you hadn't heard of Grant Morrison movie. Alan Moore wrote Watchmen. You know about Watchmen, right? At least, right? You're aware of Watchmen?
If you tell me a little bit.
Well, Watchmen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm just going on tangents now. But Grant Morrison, he's kind of wacky, and he's Scottish, and I think he's Irish, something like that. And he believes that he talks to gods. He's like,
Okay.
and he's like, oh yeah, I was talking to the gods, and they told me, Superman and Batman, they're my fit. You gotta put them on the Justice League, and he's very fourth wall breaking and meta. Like he wrote a comic book one time about a guy reading a comic book about a guy reading a comic book, very meta. And he came in the early 2000s, and the Justice League was full of people like Booster Gold. Ever heard of Booster Gold?
Nope.
Blue Beetle, Red Tornado, Fire and Ice. And Grant Morrison came on, and he was like, "What are you doing? Where's Batman and Superman? They should go on an adventures together and saving the world. Who's Fire? And I don't care." And he kicked them all out, and then we had the Justice League that you would know of when you think of the Justice League: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash. Grant was like, why aren't we writing about these characters in the Justice League? And that was a shot in the arm for DC. And you're right, they need someone like that. Again, Grant Morrison, he doesn't have as big of a deal anymore because he's kind of he did his thing and was like, okay, here you go, I did the Crisis, everything, so don't screw it up, I'll see you later. Oh my God, you screwed it all up. I leave for 5 minutes, and I'm not the biggest Grant Morrison fan in the world. I don't pick up a comic book just because his name's on it like some people do, but I appreciate what he did. And there's a comic book artist named Jim Lee, not related to Stan Lee, but Jim Lee, and Jim Lee is now the head of DC because he was the co-head with Dan DiDio, but Dan DiDio left, so Jim's like, and it's actually funny because he already told the story where someone just came into his office the other day and was like, "Hey, you're in charge of DC now." And he's like, what? Because for the past 10 years, Jim Lee, he's an artist, so he just wants to draw and he just wants to draw and
head chair.
And he likes being a figurehead for the company, being like, "Hey everybody, I love DC," and I was like, "I have to make decisions." Oh God,
that's where you bring in somebody who has that talent,
right? And it's really interesting. And early 2000s, once again, Marvel almost went bankrupt, and they were failing heavily, and they brought in this guy, and whose name I cannot remember right now, but they brought in this guy who had never worked in the comic book industry before, not once. He worked in movies and stuff like that. His job was to come in and be just a businessman, and he came in and was like, "What are you guys doing?" Same thing Grant Morrison did basically. He's like, "What are you doing? Why isn't there a Spider-Man movie?" They're like, "Well, no one really knows who has the rights. Hire lawyers. Get that stuff done in a year. Spider-Man movies made." And he saved Marvel. And they need something like that. And that's why, we were talking about, on the other podcast, we were talking about, AT&T is in charge now, and they fired Dan DiDio, and they're saying they might cancel it if their new event, the next event coming up is this thing called 5G, which means 5th generation, but they're trying some new stuff. There's going to be a new Batman, new Superman, a bit in the future and stuff like that. Just arbitrary, stupid stuff that nobody cares about. Just give us some good stories,
Right.
And they're trying all these stunts, but they're doing that. And AT&T's saying, we're going to close you down. And truth is, it's probably because they make so little money from the comic books. The comic books are only there now out of respect. Truth be told, if Marvel and DC stopped publishing comic books, Disney and AT&T would not miss a day of sleep, a night of sleep, because it's such a flash in the pan of what the money comes from. The money's in the movies and the toys and everything like that. But if AT&T comes in there and they're saying they might cancel it, what I get from that is they're not going to cancel DC Comics. They might reboot it entirely, though. Close it down for a couple months, no. Just hard reboot. And they'd be fired. Okay, you, are you not an idiot? Please come run this company, please. And then they just hard reboot. No, BS. That's what I've been saying for years. No BS, like, I think we talked about this before, where people were like, what universe does it take place in? And what's happening? It's like, it takes place in the real world on the book you're reading, idiot. Like, that's... Yeah. And I don't mean to be... I love continuity, too. I love it so much. But when you mishandle it so badly, like DC has, just start over and don't say... Well, you know, Final Crisis. Well, there's this new thing coming up called Cheeto Crisis, and Cheeto Crisis is well, the Anti-Monitor and the Monitor are gonna blah blah blah, because he witnessed, and you got the Spectre and Harbinger. They're gonna come in and they're gonna reboot the universe with the negative energy from the asshole. Like, what? Shut the I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Shut the front door.
Shut the front door. Just can you just say, like, oh, we're doing it. This is the book now, Batman. And it's like, oh, cool. And it's like, yeah, he's been Batman for about a year now. And there's Robin, there's Alfred. Oh, there's Superman. And he's been Superman about a year now. Yeah. And we're doing books. That's it.
Well, just to kind of boil down what you're saying to something that we talk about all the time, it's just you have to have a good story. And you have to have a way to make people invest in the story enough to want to keep coming back to it. And so if you keep pulling the rug out from under them, which is what DC has done, then they lose their audience. So much of what we focus on in our business and in everything we do is just about getting the story across. And we can talk about that for a while. Talk about stories.
So you can talk for a while.
That's okay. I don't mind. I will just talk about one of my co-writers, because David and I are co-writers, and we'll throw in real quick, we're going to have our plays published this summer, so that's really exciting. I can't wait to get that catalog. So mine and yours and mine and Seth's play will be in that one. But Seth is my co-writer for Patriotic Pelican, and he came and saw me today, and he has this idea for this book. And so he starts telling me there's this character, and then there are all these characters, and they go here to this planet, and he's just kind of throwing all this stuff out at me. But then the main character is going to have all these demons. You got to face all these things, and I love working with people and stuff like that, because my mind immediately goes to all the stuff that you keep complaining about. It's like, okay, wait, now if it's from here to here, how does that fit in there? And well, what about this? And what's the point of view? And so he has all these little pieces, and he wanted to do it first person because he wants his main character to be someone who is the hero and always puts on this brave front, but is actually really battling all this stuff from his past and trying to be strong when he's really just feeling completely torn down on the inside. And there was a whole lot that we talked about that, but I'm like, if you do first person, how are you going to tell the story about all these people that you're going to the planet to save? And there's stuff that that the main character might not know, and it's just structure. I mean, it's not that it doesn't work. You just have to figure out how to make it work. So this guy's on a spaceship that crashes on this planet, and all the people in the ship get separated from each other for a while. So when they come back, they can come back and tell their stories. They can come back with people they found from the planet, and those people can tell their stories. Or you might realize there's so much going on that that your first person narrator wouldn't know, that you just have to change your whole point of view or switch back and forth. And just point of view is a whole lot to consider, in any story that you write. So that's something we were working on today.
That's really interesting how that ties into everything I was rambling about, because it sounds like you're stopping that problem. You're stopping me from having to rant about that, and figuring that kind of stuff out. And you're right. The perspective is important. And what I take away from that is, if he's writing this first person perspective and you wouldn't, your perspective, your character wouldn't know those things, cool. Use it to your advantage, so you don't have to freaking worry about it, man. Like I write a lot of D&D campaigns, and there's ways to get those kind of stuff published and posted online. I'd love to do that. That's something I'd like to work on. But something I've learned is, like, my characters that are playing, they're probably not going to go to the town of Gryffindale, northern whatever. So I don't need to come up with who's the shop owner, not yet. Like, I do care about world building, and it means a lot to me, but because I made the mistake of, I built this whole town called Ellenmore, and it's like elves, and then I wrote about this, like, there's an alchemy. I'm like, okay, what if they want to get an alchemy, and what if they want to go to the blacksmith? So they have, okay, this dwarf, and his name this. I wrote this whole thing, literally 7 pages of notes on this one town. They went in there, they were in a prison, they got out of the prison, and then they left the town. They're like, oh, I think we just need to go ahead. I mean, we'll go to the stables and see if there's some horses we can get, and then I think we need to go ahead and head towards Aldenheim. And I'm like,
but wait, there's more.
right. It's like, but don't you guys want to go to the alchemy shop? You see a sign that said the grasshopper's hind leg to the left. They're like, oh, I don't need any alchemy. It's like,
great.
Thanks. And that told me, like, no one asked. So when it comes to stuff like that you were just talking about, it's like, you also gotta ask, what is your viewership even gonna want to know?
Mm-hmm.
What are the questions they're gonna ask? And the best way to ask that question is, when you are a writer, you're probably a writer because you love literature and you love stories.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you want to know?
And that's an excellent point, because so much of what I've read says when you write something, you write for yourself.
Yeah,
right.
Because you can't write for everybody.
Right,
you can't. It's impossible.
Right. So people will like what you like.
Yeah.
And if you like it, then, or if you want to know, or if you narrow it down to what you're most interested in, or however you want to look at that. And again, yeah, right, because you can't please everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So figure out what you would ask. But I mean, you were writing the D&D thing. You were writing what you wanted to know, or were you trying to figure out what they wanted to know?
I was trying to figure out what they wanted to know. I was trying to be like, I was preparing for all these things where I was like, okay, well, they could want to do this, and this, so I'm going to write everything. And it wasn't really a problem, it just became a waste of time.
Yeah. But, I mean, okay, that's creative. Is there stuff within what you created that you can maybe use as a setting for a story that you're writing? Or
yes,
I mean, it's not a complete waste.
It's not a complete waste. You're right, it's not and you know what? They could go to a whole new town.
And you could
go to the alchemy shop. And I have already made up an alchemy shop, and I can just, like, say, like, oh, it doesn't exist in that other town. I can just change it because they don't know.
They don't.
And that's a thing. As a writer, you need to understand that your writers don't know anything.
Your readers.
Your readers, sorry. Now, never treat, and I've been to, like, a lot of writing conferences and stuff, and it's all coming back to me. I forget that I know some things, you know what I mean?
I do.
But never treat your audience like they're idiots.
Right.
Don't treat them like they're idiots. But treat them like they're a little naive. Like, they don't know. And we got to remember that they don't know. They're coming into your world. Mm-hmm. They are like children.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But that analogy works for me because I also say don't treat children. We've talked about that plenty of times. Don't treat kids like they're idiots because they're not. They know things. But your audience are like children in this world. They don't know anything until you tell them. Which also means they don't have to know anything until you tell them.
Right.
So if you can't find the time to explain the Ice Queen of Cynthia Robdadal, then don't right now. And it's okay. And
unless it's vital to the story. So that's
unless it's vital to the story, right. And if it's vital to the story, you will fit it in. But if you just want to build that world, you'll get there soon.
Yeah.
You take your time, relax when you're writing, and just write the story. Write a good story that you would want to read, and that's what kind of what Grant Morrison did when he came to the DC. To tie it back to that, what I was saying, like he came in, it's like, I want to read. If you were a reader, would you want to read about fire and ice and the Bloodwind? No, you want to read about Batman and Superman. So let's write about Batman and Superman. And these concepts seem so simple to me and you. You know what I mean? Like,
why did they get away from it so much? Do you know? Why were they using these minor names?
It's sort of just like I think it's like a snowball effect where they maybe 5 years ago they have the Justice League of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and they're like, okay, well, Batman's gonna go away for a while for this story. Okay, well, he's gonna go over there, so we'll put Bloodwind on the team. You know, okay, so there's no Batman, but Superman and Wonder Woman there. Well, you know, then Wonder Woman needs to go. You know, I think we should try to sell her own book, or maybe Superman needs to take a break for a while. Blah blah blah. Like we're gonna try something over here, and you start trying things, and you kind of forget that you have completely destroyed the Justice League until the point where it's like all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. We just made everybody who we thought... Because, you know, there's the Justice League book, but then there's the Superman book. And they don't always make sense and tie together because people also... That's another problem. People aren't collaborating and speaking to each other.
That is a huge issue.
There are people There's people who are writing the Justice League book are not talking to the people who write the Superman book. So maybe in Superman, they, you know, are going to do something vital to the character, but they don't talk to the Justice League guys. And all of a sudden, Justice League can't even use Superman anymore because they go to... put a book, like, okay, yeah. And they give it to their editor, and their editor's like, you can't use Superman. And it's like, why not? It's like, Superman just died or something, you know? Like,
right.
And stuff like that happens. And also what happens is they make these new characters, and they want to push them and they want to make them into stars. You know, you want to like look at this new character, and that works. You have to do that, but most of the time it's not going to work. And they think, oh, we can put him in the Justice League. We'll put him in the Justice League, and he'll do it. Or sometimes it'll be like, oh, he's not selling his own book, so we can't give him his book, but he does have some fans, so we'll put him on the Justice League. So his fans can still read about him, but he can't sell his own book. That's what happens a lot. And that's why for the Justice League and the Avengers was a problem too. They were known as the Unsellables. That was the team name. That was the joke amongst the community. It was like, oh, look, the Unsellables have a new issue, because that's what would happen. I mean, same thing happened with the Avengers. Brian Michael Bendis was like, why isn't Spider-Man on the team? Like, well, you know, he's a lover. You know, he's like, Spider-Man's integral to the Marvel Universe. Put him on the team. Why not? Why isn't Wolverine on the team? He's an X-Men. He can be an Avenger too. Is there a law saying he can't also be an Avenger? Just make him an Avenger. Oh, people like Jessica Jones? She's an Avenger now. And then that was the best Avengers run of all time. You know, because he just came in and was like, if I was reading these books, I'd want to read about Spider-Man and those kind of characters. And so that's what he did. And, you know, I have a solution. We should just run DC.
I hear you. I'm listening to you thinking you should go apply.
Yeah, you should. I was listening to you thinking you should. The way you were talking to Seth, it's like, that's what we got to, you know what? Stay DC. Stay creative DC.
Yeah. That's
what we should do. We should just go in there and be like, let's write about Batman. Hey, Donna. And then I'll come to you because this is done playing where it's like, hey, Donna, so I want to write Batman. You're like, and you can do this thing where you can do your little thing where you say some words and magic happens. And it's like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Say some words and magic happens. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I'm the goddess.
Yeah.
The goddess of creativity. Right?
That's your next dress up day at school. Yes. What you're gonna do?
Yes, it is.
But anyway, what were other topics?
You were talking about the DC and Marvel thing, and there was something else. I guess we pretty much tied that together as much as I can with storytelling. So let me think about storytelling for us. So we, on our Fiverr, have helped somebody kind of just organize thoughts for TV. No, it's actually web series, right? Is that what it was?
It was web series or TV or on a radio show. Like, there were a couple of different things. One of them was like, I think he wanted it to be a TV series, but it kind of like became a web series. And one of them was going to be a play, and it's going to be a radio show now. It's a lot of
so
stuff.
Just an idea for a story that could be used in different media.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So I'm thinking about, like, just for me, storytelling. As a teacher for 31 years, all I do all day is tell stories. I mean, no matter what I'm trying to teach, you have to get it across in a way that gets your audience to pay attention to.
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way.
You know, and it's different for every lesson, and I try to involve the people in the storytelling. So I just enjoy writing, and I enjoy reading good books. So that's where my whole storytelling background comes from. And I'm so interested because at the end of last school year, you know, after you and I wrote and after Seth and I wrote, I didn't have any idea that was just going to be a thing. And so the kids, as soon as seniors left, like, okay, what are we writing for next year? And so now we have 2 more plays that I'm just almost positive as soon as I get them sent into the publisher, they're going to be published for next year. So we're getting ready to do our last play of this year. And as soon as it's over, and we have about another maybe 2 months until the seniors leave, and then it'll be like, oh, what are we writing for next year? So that's always fun, because they're not my ideas. I don't really know who came up with Updated Romeo and Juliet. I think that probably had to have been my idea, because I thought, well, let's just do something that people know, but do our version of it.
Right, because that was a big push from a lot of people. It was like, well, we need something more people know.
Yeah. And so that leads me to, I need to get on the publicity for that soon, because I want people to know we're doing it. I mean, hey, we're doing Shakespeare over here. It's our version of it, but it's definitely Shakespeare. And
Casey showed me the day.
The poster.
Her sketch for the poster. She's going to show you tomorrow.
She sent me the picture. I can't get my words out.
I love the font of the letters.
It's just, it's all really nice. I like the way she put the flower on it.
Dude, I love fonts. My favorite thing to do. I could spend hours like on Google Documents looking at fonts. Like, that's the best thing.
I've been looking up 60s fonts because I was playing with some publicity myself. So that's what I have to do.
You know what's fun? And this is something I thought about. You know what can inspire you? Fonts. I was like, I want to write a story with this little story called Comic Sans. You know what Comic Sans right? But that's kind of a joke, is because like it's a stupid font. Like, never ever submit like actual documents Like, we wouldn't have wrote... Okay, for the thing that we did, we would not have written it in Comic Sans and sent it to our employer, right?
Well, I don't know, because, like, as a teacher, they actually tell you that's a good one to use because it's really straightforward. It's like, nobody can look at that font and be confused by, well, is that supposed to be an A? I mean,
right,
it's
that's true. That's
really,
true, but it's kind of goofy looking, right? It's you wouldn't want an official document. If you were like, submitting a document to your boss, are you
it'd be like
Comic
Times
Sans?
New Roman. It's a little bit more.
Use Times New Roman, yeah. It's not stupid.
I don't think Comic Sans is stupid.
I don't think it's stupid either, but there is kind of a joke. It's a little bit swervy, you know, it's a joke where it's like, oh, Comic Sans. So I wrote a story. I was just looking at Comic Sans, and I wrote a story called Comic Sans, Operation Comic Sans, and it was like Operation like Desert Storm, but Sans. And so it's about this military group that like is in the desert. Point is, fonts are cool. That's it. That's the entire. Nothing to do with anything else.
Well, as a person who has worked with yearbook before, there are different types of fonts. And do you know what sans serif means?
No.
Okay. So you know how Times New Roman,
Is that
like at the end of the T, it has like the little kind of design on the end of the, like at the edge of the letters, there's like a little decoration on the end of it.
A little swirly.
Yes, that is a serif. And so I don't know if it's Latin or not, but Comic Sans, it's just a straightforward font, and a lot of other fonts are that way, and those are called sans serif fonts. So the ones that don't have little swirlies at the ends of them are serif, and the other ones are sans serif. Sans means without, and that's a Shakespeare word. That's in Shakespeare a lot, actually. Most people don't know what it means, but I've read so much Shakespeare. And
I didn't know that.
So I have taught you something about fonts.
That is interesting.
Yes. So,
I think it's Latin. I like to imagine anything cool is Latin.
I'll have to get my phone and look up serif and see if it has an etymology. But we have just really gone all over the world.
I know, it's great. What were the other... Before we started recording, what else did we say we were going to talk about? Talked about the podcast and the tier making. And, Wrath of Khan.
Oh, yes. So you talked to me about what you thought, and it'll remind me of the movie. Yeah. And I can tell you what I thought.
Over on the other podcast... I think I already mentioned it in the saying we've been watching a new one every week. I have to watch The Search for Spock next.
I love that
one. I watched Such the Motion Picture, and then I watched The Wrath of Khan. Mm-hmm. And it just engulfed me. I was watching it on my phone. I couldn't put my phone down. So here's what happens in Wrath of Khan. Basically, it starts and Spock is like training a new group of like cadets, and Kirk is an admiral now, and they're going on like a test run where they're just going out into space on a test run. Nothing big. But Chekhov is like on a new ship doing some work, and they go to like explore like this like distress signal or whatever, and they discovered the Botany Bay. Do you remember what the Botany Bay is? The Botany Bay. So earlier in the show, they found a distress signal from the Botany Bay, and it was this ship where all of the crew had been like frozen or like cryogenical frozen since the year 1999, I think, is what it was. So, and the leader of that group was named Khan, and he is a result of late 20th century genetic testing. Basically, they made like the perfect human, the quote unquote perfect human. He's extremely intelligent, extremely strong, like Khan. That's Khan. And he led this group, and in the show, Kirk, they found him, they brought him on board, like, hey, what's going on? But then Khan, kind of insane because of the genetic testing, he tried to kill Kirk and take over the ship for his own. So Kirk, he did not know what to do. He exiled them to this planet, and in hopes that they'll survive. But after some time had passed, a planet nearby, the one they were exiled to, blew up. Oh. And it shifted the the position of the planet they were on. And so just that slight slight shift, everything that was alive on the planet, like almost everything died. Like it became like a desert wasteland. Because
like Kirk didn't know that because he didn't go back to check on them.
Right, Kirk didn't know that, right? Because they hadn't come back to check on them, and that was sort of that's where like maybe like oh man, Kirk probably should have come back and like checked on there because he exiled these people, but they tried to kill him, but he didn't murder them. So they've been living on like this desert planet. Khan's wife died. They've been there for a while now, And so Chekhov remembers this, and he's like, oh crap, we gotta go. And so Khan catches him and uses these like mind control things, like bugs that he has, to control Chekhov and Chekhov's captain to take over their ship. So he takes over their ship and he looks through the data of what's going on in Starfleet. That's what's going right? Right? Yeah. Okay, for some reason that felt wrong to me. Okay. Starfleet, see what's going on, and he learns that there's this thing going on that is being led by Kirk's ex-lover, Dr. Morgan?
Were they like, did we do the whole planet?
The,
yeah,
Genesis. Genesis, that's right. Okay, so you're starting to remember.
I do.
And so,
the bug type things, oddly enough, is what really.
Oh, right. That's weird. So yeah, Khan goes and he wants Genesis, because also Genesis is like a bomb, and he just wants to kill Kirk. He's just driven by revenge because his wife died. He blames Kirk for the death of his wife
and his son too, right? Wasn't his son?
I don't remember there being a son. I think he has a son, but the son isn't dead yet.
Okay, so it was just the death of his wife.
I think that guy was his son. I don't remember if they specified it was his son, but there's a guy that later when he dies, he goes, "I will avenge you." So maybe that was his son. So, but right, he just wants to kill Kirk, and eventually, everyone's like on his crew's like, "Dude, like we have a ship, we can go anywhere." And Khan's like, "No, we're gonna kill Kirk." Because he wants to outthink Kirk. And so basically the whole movie is like a game of chess. That's what I loved about it. Mm-hmm. On the Botany Bay, when they find it, there's a chessboard of an unfinished chess game. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, so yeah, it was supposed to be like that, where they just keep going. They never meet in person. They're just talking over screens like, hello, Kirk. And it's like, Khan, you remember the screen. The screen, yeah.
And also, I know Ricardo Montalban. I've watched him so many things.
Me too, the Grandpa and Spy Kids.
So just watching him, well, he was also on Fantasy Island, which is what I used to watch. Yeah. But he's just such a good actor. He's
really Shakespearean.
Yes, and so was Kirk.
So was Kirk, right? It was perfect, and I just that's what captured me was the characters, their intellectual battle, and and them going back and forth. And in this movie, I loved how Kirk is an absolute mother effing gangster. Like, there's a scene later where he's just like they're stranded on like this like asteroid where they launched Genesis or whatever, right? And he's like eating this apple and like, what are we gonna do? And he told, and he had like he secretly communicated with Spock because he knows Spock is still like on the ship, and he was like basically like used codes to like tell him like, hey, they're listening on the transmission. I know they are, so just don't. The point is he had this plan with Spock, right, where Spock was gonna come back in 2 hours and get him. But everyone else thought that Spock had they abandoned. Because they were like, oh, if you don't hear from us in an hour, just get out of here.
Okay.
So everyone's like, oh man, they left. And about 2 hours goes by and Kirk's just super calm. We're like, how are you so calm? Like, he's like, oh, you got anything to eat? Like, that's what you can think about time like this? So he's eating an apple. And they're like, and then it's like, yeah. And he pulls out this little communicator and goes, all right, Spock, you ready? And it's like, yes, coming to pick you up. And it's like, what? And he's like, I told you, I don't like to lose. Like, just like an absolute freaking gangster. I loved it so much. He's so cool.
Oh, that's great.
They go back to the ship and he just keeps outsmarting Khan. Mm-hmm. And that's what's so cool about him. It's like, he just keeps he's getting you, man. He's getting you, Khan. And Khan's like losing his mind.
Right. That's what I remember.
I think Khan's last words are like, with my final breath, I spit on you with my final breath, and something.
So Shakespearean.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's like, oh my gosh, and he's like dying, and everyone's around him dead, right? So he's on him. He's like, I die knowing you can't get away, or something. He says something way better Shakespearean than. And then of course Spock sacrifices himself at the end. No, do you remember the context of that? What's happening there? Mm-hmm. Where they need to repair the accelerator or whatever to go into light speed.
He can deal with the radiation and not for longer than other people, but he closes himself in so other people don't have to be.
So he can go and get it and tells McCoy he's thinking logically. And I have a lot of thoughts on that because, no, he said he's thinking logically, and maybe but no, he's thinking with his heart.
Yeah. And
that's at the end, Kirk sees the most human of all of us. Spock was, and the whole thing they're pushing, and I've had a very close group of friends since 6th grade. We're still all best friends, and so nothing makes me more emotional or moves me more than acts of friendship in movies. That's what gets me. I don't give a crap about romance, but acts of friendship, they freaking get me, man. I cry so much in movies when watching movies, and the whole movie, what he says, Do you remember what he says to Kirk?
You can tell me.
All the time. He says, I have always been and will always be your friend. And which is like, that's like the most emotional Spock's ever going to get, you know? And so at the end, he's like, I'm thinking logically. No, he was thinking with his heart. And here's why. Yes, he can handle it a little bit longer. But he's not the only Vulcan on the ship.
No.
You know, and also he's like an admiral. When you're thinking logically, those are the people who are going to sacrifice themselves. He's not expendable. Mm-hmm. There are other people who are expendable.
Good point.
But what happened is he was like, I got to do it. And he just stood up and didn't say a word to anybody. He just like, he knew what was going on. He's like, crap. He stood up, thought for like a second, stood up, walked down there and went to do it. And because he's like, I don't have time to try to convince anybody else or whatever. I'm just going to do it. It's not logical. Because like I just said, like he's not expendable. He could send others to do it. But he doesn't want to take that chance on his friends is what it is. He doesn't want to take the chance of like wasting any time. Mm-hmm. So he just goes and does it. And sacrifices himself for his friends. And he's all like, yeah, logically, no, it was not logical. You were thinking with your heart.
Right. And I think that's what, because we know so much of Spock is his heart through the whole series, even though he denies it, they make it very clear. But that was such an obvious...
Right, yeah, it's such an obvious thing. And you're right, Spock is like that character who like thinks that he's like not, he acts all emotionalist, but like, come on, man. Mm-hmm. You're the most human of all of us, like Kirk says. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really great moment. And even not watching the whole show, I mean, I still like felt that. Like I didn't like it at all. And I just loved the movie. The movie was a much higher production quality than Star Trek: The Motion Picture because obviously been a couple years, they got some more money in there, and it felt a lot more. It felt like a bigger event. It really did. It felt like a big action. I mean, there wasn't really any action, but there was like some more. There were a lot of cool, interesting shots and some CGI was something in there. It wasn't all just hand models or whatever, and just really cool stuff. And
what year was that?
Wrath of Khan?
I don't remember.
I have no idea.
So what do you know about Search for Spock?
Nothing. I know nothing about Search for Spock except that Spock is apparently, like, even they're searching for Spock, which is like, what does that even mean? I don't know what that freaking means, man, because he died. Okay. So, like, but like...
Okay. Think about what you know about the movie you just watched. Talk about some of the main key points about the movie you just watched.
Friendship and love.
Plot points.
Oh, plot points. Genesis? Rebirth and Are they gonna... What? What? That is a... Oh my god. I gotta see this movie now.
That's why, even though it's illogical, it's storyline.
Right, yeah, right. It's still... Okay.
Because Spock's in a whole bunch of stuff after this movie.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm about to say. I know that he's in the... He's on the poster for the other ones, man.
Right.
So it's like, what? And they like... Don't they burn his body at the end and send it out into space?
They don't burn it.
Oh, they don't burn it. It just sends out into space. Mm-hmm. So like I was thinking like maybe like they just go back to find his body for some reason. Like maybe like it just picks up right where it left off. Like, oh shit, we shouldn't have done that. Grab it or something. I don't know. But okay, interesting.
That was an 82.
I was gonna say 82. I should have taken the chance. I'm like, oh, 82.
Well, it was fun giving you a little bit of thought-provoking reveal there.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
It's so interesting what they do with that. It really is good. I don't know how far ahead they planned that, but
now I have heard that there aren't many good ones left, like good movies left.
Well, a lot of people don't like the one where Data does the similar thing, where it's the very last one, where he saves Picard because there's this weapon that has to be disabled, and he doesn't want them both to die. He knows he can do it, but he knows it has to be blown up, and he knows somebody has to be there to blow it up. And so he puts this whatever on Picard, and he gets beamed off, and he stays to make sure that the weapon is detonated, and he dies. And a lot of people don't like that Data dies. But a lot of people just don't like that movie. And when I watch all the Star Trek movies, I can pick them apart, but I just love them. I love the characters. I love
just enjoy the ride.
A lot of people make the videos now about Picard, and I've watched all 4 episodes, and there's I think I mentioned the show called Ready Room, where Will Wheaton, who played Wesley Crusher, is the moderator. And by the way, if you don't know who that is, do you know who that is? Have you watched Next Generation? Do you know him? Will Wheaton? Okay. So every time we watch it, my husband goes, "That's David." And the first time he said it, I'm like, "What?" he's like, just look at him. Look how he acts. He's got the beard and the glasses and this, the demeanor, and not the hair. I don't think the hair is you, but the beard. And the more I've watched that show, the more I've kind of gone, yeah, it kind of is. I mean, he's older, obviously. But,
I think I know who you're talking about, but I'll have to look that up.
I'll pull up the ready room and show you. But anyway,
Okay,
I will talk about Picard for our last couple minutes here.
Yeah, please do.
So Picard, we just did episode 4, so tomorrow's 5. And what I understood from what they said is that the first 3 episodes are just kind of the basic setup. It took them that long to really kind of get everything, get the crew together, get Picard out into space. And so now the real adventure is starting. And it's just so interesting watching what you were saying about the whole chess move and whatever, because there are so many symbols in Star Trek. And I think that's why it attracts the kind of fan base it does, because it is not just all in your face, let me throw an explosion at you and have some people kissing on a balcony or whatever. You know, let's just make an actual intellectual story that people can dig into and find the symbolism. And Picard, because it's produced by Patrick Stewart, he's one of them anyway, he is very concerned about making sure that it lives up to the fan base, because he understands the fan base. So he really has all these little details everywhere, and people doing all these videos about the Easter eggs and this ties back to that and how it relates. And I mean, I am just so overwhelmed by it still. But watching the story unfold, one of the things I love about it is that every character in the show, they've really gone to great lengths to show that they're human and to show all their inner struggles or to allude to things that make you wonder about their past. And so the story itself is just this whole big, adventure. Let's go on a starship and go try to save this person, actually save this robot or whatever she is, android. But there's just all of the other stuff. Like each person has all this stuff going on and things keep happening and you keep wondering about it. And they brought in 7 of 9 last time and it's like, yes! Just, all these wonderful actors and actresses getting to relive their roles. And I have just so thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's just the most amazing thing. We will get to the end of the episode and my husband will go, God, why did they make these episodes so short? I mean, it's been 45 minutes. It feels like 10. I mean, it just boom. It just goes. And I'm still, every time I watch an episode, just so blown away by the production value. Because not just the actual like sets and actors, and I talked about how they don't do CGI, they do the actual, pieces for the ears and the, what do they call, appliances and all of the different things. But I mean, I swear, just the future of computers, like I've always said, Star Trek Next Generation, more than 30 years old, they had iPads, they had laptops. That what we use now is what they had then, and now they're showing like everything's projected, like it'll be something that looks like a phone on the flat surface of a desk, but everything's projected in front of you, and you move stuff around with your hand and push it away, and it goes somewhere else. And the last episode, they have these like holographic advertisements, like 3D, like coming out at you. Come see this such and such, and like interacting with you. Like it's just like, my God, if that's the future, I'm so amazed by what I'm looking at and how you can manipulate data with your hands with something that's projected. They do actually have some things that are similar to that. I've seen like a watch where you turn your hand and it's projected up on your arm. The phone, like you can push your arm and it's like pushing the buttons on your phone because it's projected from the watch that you're wearing. I mean,
that's so cool, man.
It's just
I want to
unreal.
be like a technological. I want to be like Batman and like have that stuff. But anyway, that does sound cool.
It's amazing.
I had never mind. I want to get your opinions on this real quick. It's about Picard, because I was talking about it on the Sciencefictionary, and they were talking about Picard. I was just kind of listening. They were talking about Picard, and one of them mentioned that she's really upset about this, that she used to be able, that her kids love Star Trek, and she used to be able to watch Star Trek with them, and it's very important to her that she gets to do that, and she's really sad that Picard is not really a show that she can show her kids who are like 8 years old.
Use the F word.
Yeah.
And they also smoke, which is, somebody brought up, Gene Roddenberry was way against smoking. They even did like whole episodes where they like look at people smoking on planets and talk about how it's barbaric and so horrible for your health or
it's
whatever.
Kind of annoying.
But I'm just saying that was always his stance.
Yeah.
So now
that's
you
weird.
have the captain of the ship with his cigar.
Yeah.
You have one of the people who used to be Picard's first officer, and he big long backstory. They parted on bad terms, but she pulls something off of like a plant and puts it in something like they're vaping it, and you know, obviously talks. She actually had a wine bottle, just drinking it like a wino. I mean, so it is definitely a much harder edge. In fact, the first few minutes of the 4th episode, they're showing somebody taking the Borg implants out of someone without anesthesia. I mean, it is graphic, and I couldn't watch it. I had to cover my eyes because I can't stand stuff like that.
Yeah, I would. I mean,
the person's screaming and they're just showing it straight up and like.
I'd have to fast forward, dude. Like,
I did,
and I'm not that kind of person who does that. Like, usually I'm like super chill, but when it comes to, I don't like seeing people get hurt. You know, that's my thing.
Can't stand it. I can't stand it. Like even in a football game, if they have a player down, I'm like, oh god, I just hate it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to feel about Picard not being child friendly because honestly, yes, they would have their Star Trek base, but this is they're trying to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
that's kind of relevant, right?
Yeah.
And my response to it was, you know, there's so much Star Trek already. It's okay if there's a show that uses the F word because you can be a kid and you can spend the first however many years of your life watching all of the other Star Trek, and then whenever you're old enough, then you can watch Picard.
That's a very good point.
It's like graduating. But I did see your point because then someone else, Andrew, went on to say that, you know, whenever he was a kid, everything he bonded with his dad with was over sci-fi, because sci-fi was very much always a family friendly thing where you could do that, and they have young kids, so that's why it was a concern to her. It was something that like I never would have even thought of because I don't have kids, but I mean, do your kids give any crap about Star Trek?
Not really.
Yeah.
No,
so
when Sam was here, when he was in like junior high, I think we used to stay up and watch one TNG episode with him before bed until we watched the entire series. And then we watched all of Voyager. And then we watched all of Deep Space Nine. So he knows it. He's just not a fanatic.
Trekkie.
Yeah.
He's
correct,
not a Trekkie.
Correct.
Would you say you're a Trekkie?
Oh, most certainly.
Would you want to cosplay as a Trek?
I could do that. In fact, I have. We did something at LSU one time where we went. They showed a Star Trek movie, and it was just a very simple, like gray shirt and black pants that kind of had the little pull up like they did. We were crewmen, and people were like kind of like, oh, okay. But I mean, we did it. I mean, you know, didn't have to do it. Right. It was me and my boyfriend at the time.
You should consider. Usually, like a convention. There's tons of conventions, but you have a lot of fun.
I'm sure.
But anyway, so overall, though. Thumbs up for Picard. You're liking the show?
I still have not quite the strong emotional reaction that I did to see it start again. Yeah. But every time I'm glued, like literally, I feel like I blink my eyes and the episode's over. It just all goes whoosh, it goes by. So good.
That's great. So high recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. Next week, I'll probably be able to talk about The Search for Spock. So that's exciting.
I should probably watch it again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, let's do it. That'd be great. So this was a great little show today. Don't forget to go check out our Twitter, stay_creativeDD. Do the tier that I made and tag us in the post. Comment.
Do your own version.
Do your own version. Yes. Rank them for us and tell me what you think. And then the video should be up pretty soon, and you guys can go watch it and judge me and tell me that I'm stupid for my picks.
or even suggest other tiers, because that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and then we could do something. We could rank once I watch all the Star Trek movies, we can rank the Star Trek movies or the things like that. So, is there anything else we need to mention once again?
I think that we've just kind of gone around the world as usual, but it tied in.
Tied in nice and well. It's all about storytelling, you know?
Yes, it is.
So, guys, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Leave a comment telling us your thoughts, anything at all. Say first, say second, say third if you're the third comment. We love hearing from you. And thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Creative Conversations with David and Donna. I'm David.
I'm Donna.
Stay creative.